Substantial progress has been made on establishing the Citizens' Assembly, and its inaugural meeting will be held in Dublin Castle on 15 October next. Resolutions approving establishment of the Assembly were passed in the Dáil and the Seanad in July, and Ms Justice Mary Lafoy was appointed chairperson. Tenders were then issued for the necessary services to support the Assembly, in particular for a polling company to select the 99 citizen members who will, with the chairperson, make up the Assembly. In addition, accommodation for the meetings of the Assembly after its first meeting and services such as translation, live streaming and media support have been secured. The Assembly's inaugural meeting will be an introductory session to allow the members of the Assembly the opportunity to meet the chairperson and each other and to gain a better understanding of the context of the work that they will be undertaking. The Assembly will meet again in late November, at which time it will commence its consideration of the first item referred to it by the Dáil, and that is by the Dáil resolution. That is the 8th Amendment of the Constitution. I am sure the House will join with me in wishing Justice Lafoy and the Assembly well in their work.
Deputy Ruth Coppinger.
Taoiseach, that was a very, very short and scant in detail report on the Citizens' Assembly. And it seems that you're determined to go ahead with this charade and this delaying tactic. That's what the word on the street is, that it is a delaying tactic, a sort of Craggy Island solution to a problem. And it flies in the face of the polls. Now, you always eschew polls, but yet you're using a polling company to pick 99 people. But actually, all the polls that have been done have been a lot more than 99 people involved. And the last Amnesty poll showed 87% want an increased availability of abortion under a range of circumstances. 38% of people express themselves to be fully pro-choice. But in another question in the Amnesty poll, Taoiseach, and I'd be interested in your response to this, 68% of people in the poll said we should trust women when they say they need an abortion. And I think that that's what this is about. And Taoiseach, I wonder will you join me in sending solidarity to the tens of thousands of women and men who struck and protested in Poland yesterday. And what did they strike against? They struck against a law very similar to the 8th Amendment that would attempt to completely ban abortion in Poland. And who is behind that, Taoiseach? The Catholic Church is behind it, and their representatives in the Polish Parliament. And there will be, I predict, an absolute outcry against that in Poland, because one of the luxuries that you have, Taoiseach, one of the reasons in your 41 years you've been able to sweep this under the carpet, we do not have backstreet abortions in this country, because we have the luxury of England, in particular, being 1 hour away. But we do have abortion in this country, Taoiseach. 3 women a day carry out abortions in their own bedrooms. And how do we know that? We know because women on web tell us that 3 Irish women make contact with them every day to access abortion pills online. So there's about 1,000 abortions taking place illegally in this very state. The real question is, are we going to keep them illegal, or are we going to allow them to be made legal?
Thank you.
Now, my 3 questions are this in relation to the Citizens' Assembly, Taoiseach. First of all, you've outlined 2 meetings that will take place. Can you give us a clear timeline for the Citizens' Assembly? When will it report back to a Dáil committee and to this House with recommendations? The second question relates to witnesses, and there's a lot of concern about this among various groups. So, the expert group, what will be the composition of this expert group of witnesses? It's vital, for example, that they're not all lawyers or constitutional experts. They must include experts in women's health, obviously, but they should be independent witnesses as well as those who have, views and a commitment or an input into this. For example, will the United Nations be asked to give testimony on this issue, which they've obviously given their views on? Will the World Health Organization be present? And will women's organisations, pro-choice groups, others then, who do have a strong view, also be asked? And lastly, Taoiseach, what Dáil committee will these recommendations go back to? Are you setting up a new special Dáil committee? Or are you actually referring this to a health committee? Or what committee is this going to before it comes back to the floor of the Dáil?
Taoiseach.
Thank you, Deputy Coppinger, for her question. Not for us to interfere in any other jurisdiction in terms of their legislation. The fact of the matter is that abortion is illegal in this country and remains so, except in very specific and particular circumstances that were legislated for under the Protection of Life Maternity Bill a number of years ago. Now, in respect of the timeline that you mentioned, the Assembly has 12 months to do its duty. The first item that it will deal with is a reflection and consideration of the 8th Amendment to the Constitution. I would expect that the chairperson, as an eminent Supreme Court judge, will work with the Assembly in setting out the timeline that they consider appropriate here. My view is that the Assembly will report back on the 8th Amendment before the first half of 2017 and then move on to the other items. Will it be possible for outside witnesses to give evidence? Of course. The proceedings will be streamed live. There will be the opportunity for people in Northern Ireland or any other jurisdiction who are unable to travel or who wish to make a submission to do so. That's very possible for them to do that. The expert panel will be appointed by the chairperson, and that will apply in respect of each of the individual items that are being considered by the Assembly, including the 8th Amendment. And the role of the panel would be to provide the Assembly with impartial information. So Ms Justice Laffoy will make those appointments for the different elements that it will consider. Obviously, I would expect that the Justice would consider very carefully the skills and experience and nature of the characters of the people that she would appoint. And I think that she would obviously consider, Deputy Coppinger, your point about whether you appoint all academics or professionals or whatever. This is about people right across the country, reflective of the Assembly itself, gender, age, region and so on. We've put in place arrangements for the establishment and the continued operation of the Assembly, selected a venue for the post-October meetings, and I think once it gets down to considering its business, there will be considerable interest in the discussions that will take place there. So I think that deal. Obviously, this will come back to a committee of the Oireachtas here, and we'll consider how best that committee should function, in the same way as we did with the Oireachtas committee, chaired by Deputy Buttimer at the time, which considered the implications of the Protection of Life Bill.